Well, hello everybody. It's Mrs. Perryman, and I'm glad to be here with you today. And today we are going to be talking about Choux paste, and that is a fabulous dessert that is really easy to make, and it looks beautifully fancy. And you can fill it with all kinds of lovely things like cream or ice cream, and put all kinds of toppings on it. My personal favorite is chocolate. So we're going to talk about those today, and then your next school day that you're here, we're going to be making those. So how does that sound, Anthony?
That sounds good.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, oops, I should have had that already going here. Sorry about that. Okay, so you guys probably have seen and probably even had something made from Choux paste before. See how it's spelled funny? C-H-O-U-X. Choux or choux paste. It's a French word. Choux, pâte à choux. And right up here, these are eclairs. Have you guys ever had eclairs before? Anthony, have you had eclairs before?
I think so. They look delicious.
They are. And they're kind of a little bit crunchy, but a little bit, they're hollow usually on the inside. See how that picture looks there? And when they're baked, they puff up due to the egg in the mixture, and often, like I said, they're hollow on the inside, and so you can feel that lovely hollowed bit in there with all kinds of pastry cream or ice cream or whipped cream or any type of I don't know, frosting, all kinds of things. And you can shape it too, like this swan. This is you can actually pipe the neck and head of the swan and bake it. And then this is just the actual just a ball of dough, or usually I just use like a portion scoop. These like this are extruded, like with a big pastry tip, and then they're baked in the oven. And like I said, due to the egg, they will puff and make a hollow place for all kinds of yumminess. So let's talk about those for a minute, shall we? Okay, so the way it's made is just with the simplest of ingredients. And so just some water and some butter and flour and eggs in, and you mix that together, and then you cook it on just stovetop until it starts to, I don't know if you can see this picture here, our picture of us is kind of in the way here, until it forms kind of a paste like this. And then we'll put it in the mixer and add some other parts to it. And then you scoop it out and just in little mounds, like kind of like you would cookies, on a sheet pan, and then you bake them in the oven. And then, like I mentioned earlier, they'll puff up and kind of brown. And once they cool, because you want them to be completely dry inside, but once they cool, they're usually pretty dry, and then you can either pierce them with the tip of a frosting tip and fill them with things, or you can cut them in half and then just set the filling inside that way. So there's a couple of different ways to use it, but these are called profiteroles or cream puffs. Probably heard of those. And then again, like we mentioned before, the eclairs. Okay, so it has Choux paste has kind of an interesting history. And I don't know if you remember some of your world history or not, but there was a lady named Catherine de Medici. Anthony, have you ever heard of that lady, Catherine de Medici?
It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. Well, she was an Italian, and she was from a very famous and wealthy family. And she her uncles were I think one of them was actually the Pope, and so they had a lot of political what we'll call political clout. And so her arranged marriage to King Henry of France was kind of a political uh, way that those two countries could link themselves together. And so she was very young, I think about 15, when she was actually married to Henry, and that was actually even before he became king. But again, it was a political type of arrangement. But with her, being in Italy, she had access to a lot of wonderful foods, and her court from her family had lots of access to lots of beautiful foods and chefs that would prepare these things. And so she was very cultured and had very refined taste. And so when she moved from Italy to France to marry Henry, she was said to have brought her royal court with her. And all of these things, she brought bakers and distillers of wine and spirits, and just really knew how to eat in a very fine and fancy way. And in this court that she brought with her, one of her chefs actually invented this first version of the choux paste, which is not exactly like we have it today, but the beginnings of this kind of patisserie. Anyway, she was credited with a lot of other things too, which we'll talk about. She was actually credited with showing France how to eat with a fork. And in her country, in Italy, they did eat with a fork. And there's a picture of one here. I don't know if you can see it. Again, it's kind of behind our picture there, but it was in France. It may have been considered maybe a little pretentious, or a little what we'll call snooty, and so not everybody thought that it was a good thing. But as she became popular, the things that she brought with her became popular. And so we always kind of consider France as the culinary mecca of where all things really culinary or fine dining began. And actually, I think she was the one that kind of brought it to life. And so we have her to thank for that. But she brought with her not only the chef that created the choux paste, but things like artichokes. Do you know what artichokes are, Anthony?
I think so.
They look kind of like they're actually in the thistle family, but they're kind of prickly and green, and kind of like almost look like a flower, but they're completely green, and you can steam them and pull off the petals, and then you eat the kind of the meaty part of the petal. And you can make things like eat them that way with butter, or sometimes you'll see people make a nice dip out of them. Okay, aspics are did you have Jello salad at your Thanksgiving dinner, Anthony?
I'm not too sure. Jello? What is
Yeah.
that?
So, well, sometimes you'll see at the holiday meal, sometimes somebody will bring a Jello or a Jello salad. And aspics are kind of the precursor, or it came before good old Jello. And aspics were actually made from the gelatinous where you cooked meat. You know, sometimes whenever you see meat, how that kind of, after it's been cold in the refrigerator for a while, you'll see that kind of gelatinized fat. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do now. And
Yeah,
I didn't have one at my
yeah,
birthday party, but
yeah.
I had one, I think, last Thanksgiving.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's kind of aspects, generally speaking, well, not always, but they're more of a savory dish, whereas we think of Jello as sweet, right? But this would have things like veggies or little decorative things kind of set into the aspects. And so, but she did that. Baby peas or something that she introduced, broccoli, different kinds of cakes, and of course pasta, which we always credit the Italians with, right? And truffles. And so she really brought a lot of culture to France whenever she came. So I think that's fun to think about that. And there's a whole history of just looking at things that she did in her life. Um, that would be just interesting on its own just to read about. Okay, so the shoe paste began to, even after uh, Catherine was no longer, shoe paste still was something wonderful, and people kept working with it. And there was a man named Anton Karim, and he is a very, very famous culinarian. And he really is the one uh, Frenchman who probably brought French cuisine to its peak. And he's actually the one that's credited with the creation of the chef's uniform as we know it today, and also of the kitchen and the dining room brigade, like the different stations in the kitchen. And how kitchens are organized, and how who's in charge, and then the different levels uh, of, of chefs, and it's really interesting to read about him too. But he was a writer, and again, like a chef. Um, and anyway, he took that shoe recipe and made something, this beautiful tower. And you'll see these usually around Christmas time is what made me think of them. Uh, and they're made just like a little Christmas tree. And oftentimes they're filled with some kind of pastry cream, or, well, all kinds of stuff. Sometimes uh, different kinds of frosting. But again, he was a pretty famous fellow, and that was his take on the shoe paste. Okay. Right. So that is what we're going to be making to, I guess, when you guys come tomorrow, and we'll have fun with that. I've got a recipe for pastry cream, which is a beautiful vanilla pastry cream, which is like making homemade pudding, really. And it we'll add vanilla to it, but it's made with lots of eggs and with dairy. And then we cook it a little bit so it gets nice and thick. And that's what, remember whenever we cook eggs, we talked about how eggs tend to thicken things. If you think about how you scramble an egg in a skillet on the stove, how it starts out really loose and watery, but as you apply heat to it, it starts to thicken. And it does that very same thing whenever we put it in something like a cake, or even like whenever we start to make our custard. It will start out kind of milky and really loose, but as those eggs start to coagulate and thicken, it will thicken up just like pudding. And so it's amazing to watch that process. And as it cools down, it will even be thicker. And as we will make our profiteroles or our cream puffs, and then once our pastry cream is nice and thick, we'll pipe it inside. And I bought some ice cream too, so I thought you guys might have fun maybe doing some with pastry cream and some with ice cream. What do you think about that, Anthony?
That sounds really good.
I know. And then I thought we would melt some chocolate to dip the tops in, and maybe dust them with a little bit of powdered sugar. So, are you hungry? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we'll have a really fun time with that. Then the next day we're going to make an apple strudel. And strudel, have you ever heard of apple strudel before?
I think I heard about it, but I forgot what it looks like.
Okay. Well, strudel is kind of an Austrian type dessert from Vienna, actually. And the strudel is made with something called phyllo dough, which is it's real papery thin. And have you ever heard of baklava?
I don't remember.
It's
I
like
don't think so.
it's like pecan pie, but instead of pie dough, it has these little thin sheets of crunchy pastry. But we're using phyllo, which is the same thing. And we'll brush that with butter so it gets nice and crispy. And the filling that we're going to make is made with golden, delicious apples, and it has a kind of a variety of spices. And we're actually going to make two. But I put a video on Moodle for you guys if you get a chance to watch it. One of my favorite teaching channels to watch is America's Test Kitchen, and they actually came up with a really great way to make these where they stay nice and crispy, because that's usually the problem because of that wet filling with the apples. It causes your phyllo to not be crunchy, and that's the delicious part of it, is the fact that it's crunchy. And so anyway, they have some pretty good techniques for keeping that crunchy. So if you get a chance, if you'll get on Moodle before class tomorrow and watch it, or rather Friday, because as we're not making it till Friday, so you've got a little while. But if you'll look at that, you'll kind of have an idea of what we're doing, and I think it's going to be a fun time. I was fortunate enough one time to actually attend a class where we made the phyllo pastry from scratch, and it was quite a process. And we actually made the dough and we rolled it, but we used like cotton dish towels out on the table, and my goodness, they were probably I don't know, 4 or 6 foot. They were really long pieces, and we would roll them and roll them and roll them and shake them and stretch them, and they were just paper thin. But gosh, it took like 3 hours to make all of that. And so I'm going to save you guys the trouble of making it from scratch. And also I bought frozen phyllo dough, which will be just fine. And I don't think there's very many people that actually make homemade phyllo dough anyhow, but I think it'll still be a really tasty and fun process for you guys. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So, well, that is about all I have for you today. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow and hearing all about their Thanksgiving break. And I have missed you guys. It's much too quiet out here on Wednesdays without you guys. So anyway, I'll be really looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Okay. But I'm going to, if you have anything you want to ask me, I'll be here for a little bit. And otherwise, I will see you tomorrow.